Welcome to the Moon Baby Magic podcast, a space to honor women's rites of passage stories. From menarche to menopause, the initiations of womanhood all live within our wombs. Through our first bleed to our last, we come to know ourselves more deeply. This is a platform to reclaim the sacredness of all of it. I'm your host, Natalie Elliott, birth keeper and women's coach, specializing in womb wellness and hormonal healing. Ready for slow and sacred storytelling? Let's dive in. Hey, women. Happy podcast day. I'm recording this the night before this episode will release, and this episode was just recorded a couple of days ago on Monday. So I'm really grateful that all of this is very fresh and you're getting this conversation fresh. Before we dive in, today's one of my favorite episodes that I've ever recorded on this podcast because it's with my dear sister, Brie. And other than the fact that I adore being in friendship with her, she is also just truly one of the most inspiring, heartfelt, deep, and also grounded women that I know. And this episode really touches on a lot of topics that I think other women, those of you listening, are going to relate to that you didn't maybe realize someone else relates to. That is really the purpose of this whole podcast, if you don't know, is to create a space for women to feel seen, to feel like they're not alone in their experience, and to heal from the story medicine of their sisters. So I hope that Brie's story is that for you. A few little updates here is that this is the second to last episode of this season of the Moon Baby Magic podcast. Thank you so much for being here this season with me. We'll have one more episode coming out next week with Kristen and Nancy, my mentors, to finish off the season strong. And then the podcast will go on winter break and we won't be back until March. So I'll be busy recording for the next season and you'll be busy binging old episodes you haven't listened to, or perhaps preparing to join me on the Nourished and Thriving retreat in Nicaragua that's happening at the end of March. I want to give a quick plug for that since I won't be advertising it too much anymore because we're getting a bit closer and we have a couple of spots left. So if you've been feeling like you are ready to dive deeper into story medicine in real life, connect with other sisters, hug, sip bone broth cacao by the lake, jump into the water, kind of come out of winter hibernation in what I think is the best way possible, please consider joining us. Our retreat is actually quite affordable. And if you're listening to this now, the price goes up January 15th. So if you get in before then, you've still got that pre-sale pricing locked in. Payment plans available. We've got 7 wonderful women already joining us, and we have space for just a few more. So you can find all the details there in the show notes. It's March 30th to April 6th on an island in Nicaragua. All right, I think those are really all the updates I have for today. One-on-one support is changing in the new year. So if you've been considering one-on-one support, book your discovery call now. And yeah, let's dive right into it because I want to get you guys into this episode. So today on the podcast, we have my dear sister and spiritual counselor, Briana. Brie's story is a dynamic one that has called her into the shadows and depths of her heart many times. Through the grief portals of losing both of her parents to chronic illness and an injury that left her being bedridden, to the challenge and beauty that has been Brie's fertility journey, and so much more. You'll hear all the wisdom Brie has mined from the challenging experiences of her life and how she's learned to accept, even if she doesn't like, the realm of shadows. This is an episode steeped in spiritual depth, but Brie is also a master at honoring the real, grounded human experience of it all, too. Plus, at the end, we have a little chat about the messy, not so much talked about bits of what it takes to create a village. The stuff that, yeah, no one really wants to talk about. So I hope you all tune in to the end. I hope you love it. If you're on Spotify, leave a comment. If you're on Apple, rate and leave a review. It really helps me so much with the growth of this podcast so that it can reach more women who need to hear it. All right, let's dive right in. Enjoy. All right, welcoming Brie to the podcast. This is so exciting because Brie is an in-person friend of mine, and that doesn't always happen here. So thanks for being here, Brie. I'm so excited.
I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, this conversation kind of sparked with Brie and I talking about community, which I'm sure we're going to get into. But Brie, you also have such a fascinating life story and just like so much wisdom from your life experiences. I always learn something from you. And so I know that the women listening are in for a real treat. One thing I love to do at the beginning of my episodes is to ask my guests to share what phase of their cycle they're in and also like what phase of life you're in. And you can orient that to whatever way you orient to it. But I think it's nice for us to just get a little context right away for who you are and what energy you're showing up with today based on your cycle.
I am on my moon, just
Mm,
the very beginning. And I feel in terms of phase of life, I am also in an inner winter
mm,
chapter of life, a very liminal space. Um, yeah, lots of shedding happening right now, which is just feels aligned like both with the earth and with my cycle, which
mm.
doesn't, always happen, but it feels like it is right now for sure.
Yeah. I love that. It's like winter vibes all around. Winter, like almost winter in the outer world, winter in your body, winter in your
Yeah.
like greater life phase.
Deep winter, and it was just my birthday on the Scorpio new moon.
Ugh.
So feeling like extra scorpionic.
I love that deep Scorpio energy in you. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah, well, as I was sharing before we hit record, I often like to start these interviews asking women about their first bleeds. And we were kind of going back and forth about childhood memories a little before hitting record too. So I'm curious, like, if you do remember your first period.
I actually don't know if it was my first bleed but I do have a memory of at least like one of my first bleeds. Every summer we would go to the Jersey Shore, which is much more lovely than the way it's painted.
Mhm.
And we would stay with my mom's best friend. I call her my Aunt Kathy.
Mhm.
And I was sleeping on the pull-out bed in her living room. And I got my bleed and I was like so ashamed for staining the sheets and the bed. And I remember just like needing to gather the nerves to tell them that it had happened.
Wow.
I'm not 100% sure if that was my first bleed. I actually don't think it was, but
Hmm.
it's the first one I remember.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting how fast that like layer of shame can come in. It's like I often wonder when we're little girls, I'm like, where did that come from? Like we were so young. How did we already have that like embarrassment and shame of like, yeah. And I think sometimes I think you said this to me. You said something about unacknowledgement and shame a few weeks ago.
Yeah, anything that is, maybe this is what you're referencing, I'm not sure, but anything like repressed in the shadow gathers and collects shame like
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
And you know, like it's menstruation to me, especially our first bleed, like that I feel like that fits that so perfectly because it's like, well, no one had talked about it. It was like left unacknowledged. And so that's gathering shame.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely like a part of my story, and I think for my mom too,
Mm,
like that was her experience, and I think, she was doing the best that she could with
yeah.
the tools that she had, and not a lot of resources to talk to me
Hmm.
about that either.
Yeah.
So that shame was definitely passed down.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it goes, right? It's like passed
Yeah,
down until someone is like, I will acknowledge this.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's like the deep work that you're on, that I'm on, that
Mhm.
so many of us, like anyone listening to this probably is on. It's like
Yeah.
why it's so intense.
Yeah, I remember actually it was a American Girl doll book about
Yes,
the period. Yes,
yes, I
that's
remember
what
the
I
book.
got. Yeah, that's the book.
That's The Care and Keeping of You.
Is that the name of it?
Yep.
Oh wow. Yeah. So that's the one. That's how I learned about my bleed.
Wow. Yeah. I think a lot of us had that book. I've had other people mention that book on this podcast too.
Wow. It was probably the only one from that time
Probably.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I don't even remember what it said, but yeah, it
No.
was
I remember the
probably.
illustrations.
I do too, funny enough. The
Yeah.
illustrations were, yeah. Okay, so how were those like early years of bleeding? What was that like? Did the shame carry on? How did you relate to your family and friends? Like, what was that like?
So we touched on this before. My memories from early
Mm,
childhood are really scattered.
yeah.
So there's not so much there.
Mm,
I like the feeling, like I definitely remember a feeling of comparison
hmm
for sure of like I got my bleed much earlier than a lot of my friends.
mm, hmm.
So there was a feeling around that. And also just like had no idea how to properly use, and I mean, I feel like I used like a gigantic pad the first time. It was like way too big for my little body.
Yeah.
Had no idea how to use a tampon. And back then, those were the two options presented to me.
Yes.
So like a lack of
Mm,
resources. Um, that's all that really comes to mind there.
yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It is interesting that theme around like how do I do this? And like, what do I do? There's just like a lack of containment around menstruation, I feel, that
Mm,
leaves us as little girls kind of like flailing. We're like, what? How do I, what do I, it's like a confusion.
mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
was like so many other women put on birth control just
Oh,
so
wow.
young.
How old
Yeah.
are you?
In my like mid-teens, late teens,
Okay.
and like in parallel with my thyroid. So that kind of came to light around the same time that I was put on birth control.
Wow.
And I remember that I wanted to go on birth control initially
Yeah.
because, and not even for like sexual reasons. Like I remember it being like that sense of comparison. Like I remember wanting
Mhm.
to go on birth control because it seemed like my friends were on birth control.
Yep. Yep.
And
I've probably said this on way too many podcast recordings, but it's like the modern day rite of passage. Instead of honoring menstruation, we all get on birth control because that's what our friends do.
oof, yeah, that feels
Yeah.
very true. Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
resonate with that for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then I feel like I went on birth control actually when it was presented as an option to help the health things that I was going through.
Yeah. So what were you experiencing? I mean, you had your thyroid stuff. Like, how did that even come up?
I was navigating episodes of hives, anaphylactic shock.
Whoa.
Yeah. So the very first time it happened, I actually don't remember where I was. It was out of nowhere. Like I started developing hives all over my body, my face. And I remember my mom rushing me to the hospital. And I was put on a like steroid IV
Wow.
and sent home. And it was just like this mysterious thing, mysterious allergy.
Okay.
And then I did lots of allergy testing, nothing came back. And this happened a couple times. One time I do remember I was in the movie theater watching Sex and the City, the movie, and I broke out in hives like in the middle of the same thing, like rushed to the hospital. And the last time that this occurred was the first day of college, orientation. I had like just met my roommate, just met the other people on my floor, and we were all together in a group. And the what's it called? Like the RA, I think,
Yeah.
whoever.
All
Yeah,
right. Throwback.
yeah, exactly. Was like orienting us. And in the middle of this, I remember looking at my roommate and I was like, do I look okay? And she was like, you're like very red. And I was like, I don't feel well. So I went to my room and then I started vomiting and
Whoa.
I got carried out on a stretcher. I was breaking out in hives, and everyone on my floor needed to be prepared to like give me an EpiPen after this
Whoa.
experience. Yeah. So all this was occurring like multiple times. And finally, I was seeing a psychologist.
Okay.
I lost my dad when I was around 14,
Mm.
and my mom put me in therapy. So I was like, starting school and I was still seeing a therapist, and she was very unhelpful. It's the cliff notes there. But the one blessing that came from it was she was the first doctor to suggest getting my thyroid levels tested.
Wow.
And she was right. My thyroid levels were like very, very bad.
Mm.
And they immediately put me on, I think it was like levothyroxine back then or Synthroid,
Right.
one of
Yeah.
those two.
Yeah.
And the hive stopped.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
hmm
I've never heard of hives in relation to thyroid levels.
I know, me neither. I've never
Maybe
heard.
it's like an autoimmune type thing,
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I can see, I really feel like it was my nervous system.
which is a
Um,
huge root cause of the thyroid getting dysregulated in the first place is unexpressed, unacknowledged like stress.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
After losing my dad, for years was struggling with insomnia, which is, in
Mm.
retrospect, again, of course, like I'm like just unprocessed trauma, like
Yeah.
suppressed emotions. But at the
Oh.
time, like I even went as far as my mom had me in like a sleep study.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I like wasn't sleeping. I was treating my body horribly. I was binge drinking. And then I went off to college and made all of that worse. So I think that the hives were still responding to, my endocrine system not
Yeah.
properly supported, but I think it was that in tandem with just severe stress and suppressed trauma and lack of emotional regulation, just like the perfect combination of things.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's such a like, it's probably so clear for you to see now, like that like of course like your dad's
Right.
death and like all the like these things that are happening in your life, like of course they're going to manifest physically, but back then when you're so in it, I'm sure it just felt like a barrage of different things happening and you're like, what is going on? Did you have a sense that like something was wrong? Like what was your internal sense of like relating to what was happening in your life at that time?
I had, I was so dissociated from my body, which of also was
Yeah.
contributing to all of this. Like
Yeah.
again, in retrospect, I can see my body, like anything that we deny seeks expression. So I
Mm.
think that all these like suppressed emotions and the suppressed trauma and the lack of emotional support, like was just seeking expression in the loudest way possible. And
Mm.
even in that very loud expression, I was so disconnected from my body and my intuition that once I was put on Synthroid and the symptoms quieted, I thought, oh, I'm healed. I'm healed. And I was like, 18, 19 at that time. And like that was it. It was like, oh, okay, we're done here, was the feeling. It wasn't really until like years later that I came into like a much stronger relationship with my body and also more sovereignty around my health. Yeah.
So what was that catalyst? Like what was like the point of coming into relationship with your body?
Fast forward to my 20s, my mid 20s, my mom unexpectedly passed as well. And my dad had cancer, so I knew he was going to die, right? There was like a few
Yeah.
years of
Okay.
kind of like emotionally preparing for that.
Yeah.
My mom was extremely sudden, and that the unexpectedness of that hit me in such a different way. And not even comparing worse or better. I mean, they're both tragic, but just in terms of like how my body processed that loss was so very different.
Yeah.
And it was like both the end of my life as I knew it and the beginning.
Yeah,
Like there was certainly like it brought me into a real dark night of the soul.
of course.
And like any heroine's journey, that underworld, there's also gifts there when we're able to traverse that underworld in a way where we can emerge from it.
Mm. Mm.
And when I did, it was with this radical perspective of like how much misalignment was happening in my life, like how much I was living a life that didn't feel good to me. And so I started making some drastic changes in my life at that point, all the way from career to relationships to how I was relating to myself with people around you. And I think this is one of the grief has its deep challenges, and I think it also has its gifts. And I don't I say that really with the most reverence because it's not to bypass the pain of that threshold, but it is a threshold. And I think like any altered or expanded state of consciousness, grief asks us to, there is a complete shift in the life that we used to know
Yeah.
and then a question mark in the life
Mm.
that is becoming.
Mm.
And there's like, it brings us into this liminal space. So, in all of these changes, I am like trying to pause and like track the timeline here.
Take
Um,
your time.
one of them was I pursued my first yoga teacher training. And it's so funny because I feel like for so many spiritual, witchy medicine women I know. Like it opened with yoga.
It's like it almost reminds me of like it's like in college you call it like a gen ed. It's almost like yoga is like the 101 for like a spiritually aligned life.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It is an initiation in its own
Yeah.
way. And it was. And sometime after this, like so while I was in this teacher training, I also was a long distance runner. I was just in love with long distance. I've run 3 marathons, countless half marathons.
That is so amazing.
It's truly like another lifetime. Like when I talk about it now, it feels so bizarre to me. Like,
Yeah.
but it was a lifeline to me. I've said that before, and I just mean it. Running like saved me in so many ways.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and at that time, I started experiencing debilitating back pain. I was having back spasms. And I was seeking all different types of support, like Western, Eastern, everything in between, anything you could think of. I was just like desperate for support at that time. And it got so bad, there was a chapter where I had drop foot, so I lost feeling from my low back into my foot. Yeah, and I in that also lost like a lot of the ability to walk and care for myself in the same way. And it was just
Wow.
a short chapter of that intensity.
Yeah.
But during that, it I remember there was that documentary on Netflix, Heal. Did you ever see it with
I
Joe
don't think so.
Dispenza?
Oh, wait. Yes, I did see that documentary. Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot. I remember that.
it's old. Yeah, I don't even know if
Yeah.
it's still on Netflix, but one of the things in it they talked about was how, and I always pr mispronounce Joe DiVincenzo's. Yeah, say his last
Joe. Oh, Joe Dispenza.
Dispenza. Thank you. Thank you.
Dispenza.
Joe Dispenza. In that documentary, he talks about how he healed his spine through
Yeah.
meditation, right? So I
Yeah.
was like bedridden and saw this and was like, oh, I'm going to do that.
Epic.
Great.
Epic.
That's it. Perfect.
Wow.
And that's really what I did.
Wow.
And so I did.
So,
Um,
yeah, what was that journey like? Like, can you speak to that a little more?
yes. Well, one, I fell in love with restorative yoga, just to call that
Mhm.
out, and I still love restorative yoga.
Yeah.
And restorative practices. So I think that like what that really opened for me was I started coming into relationship with my nervous system and my body in a completely different way. So
Mm.
coming home to my body, really.
Yeah.
I, around this time, also met my psycho-spiritual counselor. Her name is Ashley.
Mm.
And to this day, I still work with her. And this was
Wow.
many years ago. Our relationship has evolved a lot over the years, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And she was just very pivotal at that time too, in helping me work through a lot of this as well. And I like just came into a whole new relationship with meditation. I would imagine myself running and running the marathon and walking, and it just was like moving through my day in my mind
Wow.
and imagining like every vertebra of my spine healthy and healing,
Mm.
and radically started to change my diet. We've talked a little bit about this, but that was the opening of like the beginning of like vegan eating for me. Like anti-inflammatory diet,
Yeah.
which compared to how I was eating was an improvement.
Yeah, I just made a post on that and we've talked about that. It's like it is a step.
Yeah, yeah, it was a step. It
Yeah.
totally was. And I already was doing some of that beforehand, but it was like everything I was doing before just got sent into a whole new level of like commitment and devotion. And like my spiritual relationship just exploded at that time too. I feel like my like psychic channel opened as
Mm.
well, and in the stillness, especially because I couldn't do anything.
Mm.
Um, so I feel like I'm getting a little lost in sharing this story, but
No,
that
you're not.
was really like the first time I started to live in a more embodied way.
Wow.
Still like the beginning of starting to heal my thyroid too.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean it's kind of crazy to me and you and I have talked about this in regards to like the human design aspect that we both share, which is what, the two? The
Six.
six? Six. I always think it's the two. It's the six.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that much about this stuff, but the six, the way you described it to me is like these people that have the six, they're like learning their lessons through their own lived experiences. Like you have to go through stuff to be able to then like share it and teach it and live it. And
Yes.
I like that's such a theme in your life story is like you've hit on a lot of the things that people go through in their life. Like and to have so many different like dark nights of the soul as you described it. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm no human design expert, but I just love a good rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so and during this time I'm mentioning, I remember I think I said this to you, like I was looking back on the notes in my phone, which are just like I feel like for so many women, the deepest confessions of my life live in the notes app on my phone. Like well,
Yes.
alongside my grocery lists and my dreams and just random thoughts. And I was scrolling back through and there was a note from this time, I think it was like 2018,
Mm.
of everything about my specific chart in human design. So I must have like listened to my first podcast back then around human design. And I was actually today re-looking at some things about my chart, and something about the sixth line that's interesting is that people with that sixth line, their life tends to be divided into three distinct chapters of
Yes,
those
I heard this.
early years,
Yeah.
the middle of like learning through experience, and it's not really until that third chapter, which comes later in life, like I'm just stepping into that now,
Mm.
where you are embodied in
Mm.
all of those life lessons, because there is so much that you learn. And I feel like I see that in you too. It's
Thank
like,
you.
we're just collecting all these little lessons, like otters collecting rocks in our pockets and to
Yeah,
wait to share them.
it is like that. Yeah, and I've always felt like that about myself too, that like I have to experience something to get it, to feel like
Mhm.
I'm embodied in it. And Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about human design, but I did listen to a video about the like three phases too. And I find that really fascinating. And I think it's maybe nice. I know women give me feedback who listen to this podcast all the time and say things like, your podcast has helped me feel not alone, or like listening to other
Mm,
women's stories. It's like, I didn't know other people could relate to that specific thing that I feel. And I think this is a big piece is that like you really don't have to have it all figured out. Like your early life, and by early life, I mean like, man, like until you're 50, you know what I mean? Like those are still the
yeah.
first half of your life by all means. It's like you're gaining experiences, and like through your experiences you're learning so much about yourself and like how you want to show up. And I think the way that you've chosen to live your life, I mean, even up to like I have the pleasure of knowing you personally now. And so like knowing how you are in kind of this winter phase of your life of like what's something is shifting, something's changing, and I don't know what it is, and being willing to like sit in that space. And for you, since you've sat in that space so many times, it's
Yeah.
just like really admirable and also really radically different than how the world at large chooses to do things most of the time.
Thank you for saying that. And I have like I feel like this topic could be a whole podcast in of itself because I have so many thoughts on it. And I feel one of the reasons why I feel that about this like liminal space or feel comfortable in that liminal space, even though I don't like it, like just for the record, I'm like, I don't want to be
Yeah,
here.
of course.
But I know it is fertile ground. Like it is always a gift on the other side. And I think one of it is my relationship with death
Mm,
and grief. And we are a death avoiding society.
mm,
And it perpetuates this need to be like go, 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 producing, outputting. And instead of giving ourselves permission to really be in that inner winter and let what needs to die, like the parts of us that are no longer, like, can't come with us into that new chapter.
yeah.
And it can be a painful process if we resist it. And even when we don't, like, there still can be pain, but I think that there's just so much beauty to be found here too. And something I was reflecting on before this conversation was how right now I've been really craving learning more like different types of crafts. Like I'm going to start doing a weekly knitting group I'm very excited
Oh
about. I
my
like
gosh, fun.
I'm craving like pottery. I was coloring before this, and to me it's the feeling of like when we don't know what next step to take, that sometimes the tendency can be to like almost like grind into that, like, oh, let me journal about it and like really like rack
Mm,
my mind about it and like think like what do I want to do, like what like the inner work. And
mm,
it's the feeling when you're creatively stuck on something and you like actually don't need really to do that. You need to go for a walk
yeah,
and let your mind wander a little bit.
yeah.
And I feel in that liminal space, it's almost like we need to let our spirit explore. Because when we feel imagination come back, we're back in the body. And from
Mm,
that place, we can really choose an embodied next step. But when we're in the mind, trying to figure out the next step in the mind, it's it's probably not like really going to come from the heart, the soul. It's
yeah,
going to come from the ego, that next step.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of something that I see women in like my one-on-one practice doing, or like even myself, like doing in moments of like health anxiety or health stress. It's very similar
Mm,
of like the actions that we take when we're like activated about, I just shared about this online that I like got thyroid lab results back and they were like not great. And I know I've talked to you about that, and immediately I went into panic mode, and I'm like texting Kristen, my mentor, and I'm like, oh, this, and should I do that? And like freaking out about it. And it wasn't until I like had to come back and sit and like it's okay to be here. And it's
mm,
very similar to what you're saying, that like creative void, that like what's next place. It's like, can I be here and let the actual nervous system safe, true, heart-based thing to do next because it's not that there's nothing to do next. It's not that you're just like collapsing, you know, away from life. It's just that like,
Yeah,
yeah, you've got to create the spaciousness for the right next step to appear.
that's so beautifully articulated.
Yeah, I mean, you too.
Yeah, and I can agree with, I can resonate with what you're saying too, like that health anxiety
Yeah,
for sure. And it's so, it makes so much sense as to want to figure out like, oh, what do I do here? And actually, it was Kristen one time that I was kind of in a similar place around getting blood work back and sharing it with her. And she asked, like, well, how do you feel? Like,
yeah.
maybe the what's being asked right now, and this just really stuck with me because it was so true for me in that moment, was
Mhm.
like maybe what's being asked right now is to not act from a place of urgency.
That's it.
And for me, that was like one nail on the head because it was like,
Yeah,
oh wow, can I create safety around what's happening within my body right now instead of responding from a place of panic
yeah,
like I had in the past?
yeah.
So yeah, I resonate with that big time.
Yeah, it's so deep. That's exactly what it is that sense of urgency, like seeing something external, or, you know, you can relate this to both of our things, like whether it's the health anxiety piece or whether it's like kind of not knowing what step you're going to take next and like your creative pursuits or your career-oriented pursuits or your family pursuits, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
It's like, what is that urgency? Like, where is that tracking? Where is that coming from? Is that real? Because what I've found, and I think what you found too, is like taking one small step at a time is like actually the way that it works
Hmm.
in anything.
100%. And from a grounded place as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I'm curious, like kind of switching gears a little bit to hear about. Well, first, I also don't actually know how you and Scott, your husband, for anyone's listening, I don't know how you guys met.
Oh, well, I love talking about Scott. Um, because he's just been the sweetest, most consistent thread in my life. So my husband Scott and I have been together for 13 years, more than 13
Ah,
years now. And we we met in high school. We
wow.
yeah, we had a fling in high school and I was cuckoo. I was wild, so it didn't last, but we stayed connected.
Mm,
And later on, we like nurtured our friendship. And our first like real moment was a non-date date. It wasn't a date. Scott is a chef, and at the time he was working for Robert De Niro's restaurant in New York.
oh, that's hilarious.
And he got invited to go to Nobu
Oh,
for
wow.
like big tasting menu. And all of his girlfriends at the time were busy, like all of his friends that were girls.
Yeah.
And I was in a relationship, and he asked me to go as friends and thought free food, sure, no problem. And we went and we just had, I have a picture from this night
Oh my
actually.
gosh.
I'll show it to
I
you
need to see
after.
that.
And we had so much fun together. I just remember like my face hurt from smiling and laughing so
Oh.
much. And yeah, our relationship was like, just a little wild in the beginning and casual. And once we were like both serious about it, it got serious quickly. And he's a king, truly. Like just the absolute best partner. He treats me so well. He holds my heart with such devotion, and we have been through the mud together. Like
Yeah.
that chapter is talking about of being injured. He literally, like, I have a video of him dressing me at
Wow.
that time, and we're both like cracking up, which says so much because even in
Yes.
like the darkest moments, like he makes me laugh.
Oh,
And I just am so grateful for him. And yeah, so through it all, he's been a part of my life. And this is my cat, Dino.
hi, baby.
Yeah.
Wow. It like, yeah, it just, it really lights me up to know that my friends are in such healthy, loving relationships and to like hear, yeah, like that level of joy, that level of love is like, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like more women need to hear that, you know? Yeah, that
Yeah,
that's possible.
it's possible. It very much exists, and yeah. Mhm.
And I want to talk a little bit about, we've talked a little bit about your health and different aspects of your life. And like, as your friend, I know that you've been navigating this like journey with like wanting motherhood and like moving towards motherhood. And yeah, I would love to know what you want to share about that.
So this is the first time I'm like publicly talking about this. So just to
Yeah.
acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and I feel open to it like I have felt for a while now that I'm ready. And I actually held last month a my first womb grief circle to
Wow.
support women specifically navigating grief within the womb, motherhood space, fertility, all of that,
Mm,
which also felt like a really big step in being more honest about this
yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so my husband and I have been praying for a baby for about 5 years now.
Mm.
And I'm very meticulous about the language that I use around this. This is true back with my health in all times. Like,
Wow.
my cat. Like, even, and I really believe in this that how much words are spells.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. So even around like I don't have Hashimoto's. I'm healing from Hashimoto's. I'm
Mm,
not trying to conceive. I am conceiving and
mm,
we're praying for a baby. And I think so much of languaging around fertility is very interesting to me because I even think like they're called infertility doctors.
whoa.
Implies failure. Why is
Yeah.
that? So even that, like I never use that word to describe our journey. Like I'm navigating fertility challenges. Absolutely. So anyway, I guess
I
I want to
appreciate
say
that.
that, yeah, I
Yeah.
really feel like it's very important.
I actually hate the word infertility as well. I see that word written a lot because I work with women. And so there's like different like diagnoses or whatever. It'd be like unexplained infertility. And I'm like, I've just never felt okay writing that. I do
Mm-mm.
say fertility challenges or like conception journey or like something like it, but it like infertility, I could not imagine using that word.
Yeah, it's never resonated with me. And I know for some people that like the idea of receiving a diagnosis in some way, shape, or form can be like very comforting to be like, okay,
Yeah,
this is like I can anchor into this or find peace or acceptance around
right.
it because of this. For me personally, it's never felt very supportive because it
Yeah.
feels like I'm adding a layer of unnecessary work that I'm going to have to do to unwind from that belief.
Yeah, that's fair. And it also feels very final. The word infertility,
Yes,
very final, as if there's like no coming back from that.
yes,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I don't think that's ever true.
I don't think anything is ever fixed,
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, you know, I really I just believe anything is possible. And
Mhm.
with every bone in my being and like in all the
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah.
Magic is real. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, just have to believe that. And
Yeah.
it's worked so far.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing the languaging you use.
Yeah. But yeah, so we've been in this journey for 5 years now. And in this moment, it definitely depends day per day. In this moment, I feel like I've reached a point of peace, but I have this feeling of peace and I am familiar with this, in parallel to my grief journeys too.
Mhm.
Like it's kind of like this wave of acceptance around it and not in that like I'm giving up. The prayer is still very much present. And I do genuinely believe, like, I know we're going to be parents. And I've known this for a long time. Like, I feel connected to our spirit baby. I know her name. Like,
Mm,
so I know it's going to happen for us, and I just don't know the how.
yeah.
And this journey has been really the deepest initiation of my life.
Phew, yeah.
Truly.
Mm,
In so many different ways, like, one, it's brought me into a different relationship with grief than I've ever experienced. Fertility, even miscarriage, these types of losses are disenfranchised, meaning that like they're not really acknowledged by the broader society, and because of that, tend to carry a lot more shame. Because one, it's like areas where women don't talk about it,
yeah.
which is problematic.
Yeah.
And there's lack of resources, lack of support. And I mean, that's true of grief in general. Like, I really think similar to what's kind of happening in the birth movement around this call for village, I
Mm,
also feel in the grief space very much so.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of mirroring happening in the birth space that I see in the death space as well.
Mm,
And one of them being around, like, yeah, this need for community, this need for village. And so much of this journey has been very private for the last 5 years for me.
yeah.
And I feel to some degree like I needed it that way.
Of
And
course.
now I recognize that it's like no longer, it doesn't feel even an integrity to keep it this
Mm,
close to my chest anymore because it's in
mm,
conflict with the medicine that I know can come from like shining a light on the parts of us that we feel shame around. And this fertility
wow.
journey has definitely been that for me. And there's so much more I can say on that. So I almost want to pause and see if you could help
Yeah.
me with directing a
Yeah,
question or
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely understand like holding something pretty close to your heart. I think that we do that kind of in a way until it feels like we can comprehend it ourselves.
Oof, yeah.
Yeah, and I've definitely been there in different seasons of my life. Like I didn't share anything publicly about my divorce, for example, for so long. And then when
Mm,
I started sharing it sort of casually, people were like, "Wait, what? Like you've been going through that this past year, you know?" But I think that I don't really see that as hiding. I just see it as like, you're never obligated to share like your biggest life struggles to anyone. But on the other side, I do see the beauty in like, I guess healing out loud or like
mm,
moving through something out loud, especially if you're in a safe container for it. But that's key,
mm.
right? Is like it has to feel safe in your nervous system. So, yeah, I guess I'm a little curious to hear more about how that came about for you, that it did feel safe to be like, yeah, I'm ready to let people in on this with me.
So much truth in what you just said, right? Like there's like an element of almost self-preservation, I think,
Hmm.
and keeping it close. Like for me personally, one of the reasons why I really didn't want to talk about it was and this is still true as I sit here now, like I am not open to the health advice. And
Yeah.
I, right, like unless I'm asking for that, it is
Yeah.
unsolicited.
Yeah.
And I think this is true with autoimmune health things as well. Like as soon as you tell someone, they want to be helpful
I
by
know.
saying, "Have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this?" And I
Yeah.
very much like was like, I'm so not open to hearing
Yeah.
that. But one of the blessings of this 5 year journey is that it has strengthened my inner like advocate
Mm.
in a different way where I now feel like part of the reason why I'm open to talking about it is I'm also very open to saying, hey, actually I'm not open to receiving what you're saying right now. I'm going to stop you now.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Yeah.
And years ago I think I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that.
Wow. It feels really like and we've talked about that you're like, I don't resonate with being a maiden anymore, right? And so there's that piece, and what you're speaking to now really reminds me of that like mother quality of like you're just standing in your own authority.
Yeah, big bear medicine for
Yeah.
sure. And I, yes, I feel that that's so much. Like, I think one of the reasons why I also find myself in this liminal space right now is exactly what you're saying, and been contemplating this a lot in like an archetypal way. I really don't resonate with being a maiden, even though I recognize like there's parts of my life that are still like in that kind of maiden energy. But I also am not a mother in a traditional sense. And I recognize like archetypes aren't meant to be taken literally. Like
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of th ways in which I do embody being a mother. And still there's like grief around that, right? This prayer of like wanting something in your life and not receiving it. In a lot of ways, I think that this journey has been like an initiation into motherhood.
Yeah.
And whether that means in a literal sense of being a mom or an initiation into like the archetypal embodiment
Mhm.
of a mother is
Mhm.
yet to be shown.
Yeah.
But it definitely has been an initiation. Uh,
Wow.
and to come back to your question, like what has enabled me to feel comfortable talking about it now is like the very boring answer of so much turning towards grief and turning towards
Mm.
all that this journey has asked of me
Mm.
with compassion and an openness and working through it in all the ways. Like
Yeah.
the very cliche truth of the only way out is through.
Yeah.
It is just the boring answer to that question, like bringing this prayer into ceremony, working with my counselor, like
Mm.
so much inner work with my husband, like,
Yeah.
so many different avenues of metabolizing
Yeah.
everything that's come up in this journey.
Phew. Yeah. I can imagine it. It does feel like so many things in our lives, like we were even speaking to this earlier, is like when you go through these things, it's like you're learning through lived experience. And so
Mhm.
to learn so many lessons about life through this experience of trying to bring in a new life, like I can imagine that's like on a whole different level of like what parts of yourself are being kind of like, I almost think it must be like being like ripped from the shadows. Like it's probably, does it feel like that? I don't know. That's like the imagery I'm getting.
And I think another area that has really supported where I'm at now is that in the beginning, and I think this is a common sentiment I've heard from other women navigating fertility as well, that it was so hard to show up with moms. Like I remember the first women's circle that I went to in this area, and it was for moms, not specifically, it was really just for women broadly, but
Mm,
99% of the women there were either had children or were pregnant.
mm,
And I felt such a strong sense of like, I don't belong here. And that grief is so deep, so deep. And I think as humans, like one of our deepest primal desires is to feel like we belong.
yes.
And so I think fertility can feel so, grief is isolating, period, on its own. And fertility can feel like such a particularly isolating type of grief because of that, like this feeling of not belonging. And so I felt like that for a while. And it hasn't been until recently that, and it's like this double-edged sword where I think the healing has supported being able to show up in those spaces in a more embodied way, and also showing up in those spaces has supported the healing. It's like the
Wow.
cycle, right? Of being like, no, like I want to be here. Like I want to support my friends. And one of the real pivotal moments for me in my journey, and I pray that Des would be okay with me sharing this. I don't even know if I've shared this with her, but like
Oh.
after my dear sister Des had her first baby, and I was like a part of her postpartum cocoon in showing up to tend to her, to tend to the space, tend to her baby, and not her baby,
Mm.
her and her space as she
Yeah.
tended to her baby.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I
Mm.
loved it. It like felt so good. And we've talked about this village, but it was like the first real example of like being in a village, but it was so deeply healing for me because I was like, wow, I actually like really want to be here in
Mm.
this space for my friend and like to witness her step into motherhood. And it felt like such devotion to me, like to be there and clean the dishes and do her laundry, like in the sweetest way. I loved it. And I love being of service, and it just feeds me in such a deep way. So being in that space was so nourishing. And then one day, our other dear friend was pregnant and I didn't know. And she called me, and this is, I like feel that, emotion rising sharing this.
Mm.
She's such a sweet sister to me, Eileen. And
Mm.
and she has been with us through this whole journey, just like such a pillar of holding this prayer for us, even when I have felt ungrounded in it. And she was really nervous to tell me that she was pregnant.
Mm.
And the way that she shared this blessing of news with me was so kind and
Mm.
empathetic and raw and just held space for us to both celebrate finding this news out and also like allow me to feel the grief that was present. And it was so special because I think this is one of the deepest areas of shame is like this unbearable feeling of I want to feel joy for
Mm.
the people in my life. Like I know when like their spirit baby is not mine. So when they receive that news, like that's for them. And I want to be able to celebrate them. And then also it does trigger like a wave of grief for me. And it's been really like, I think that's actually been one of the most challenging parts to hold is the duality of that. And anyhow, she like it was just like the kindest way anyone has ever, it was just so special the way we had this conversation and the way she held me. And I was able to be there for her too. And fast forward, I was part of her birth. Um, I was one of the three women who created her blessing way.
Wow.
But she told me this news moments before I was driving to Dez's to take to offer her postpartum support.
Wow.
And I got off the phone and I remember like the wave of grief was so unfathomably heavy.
Mm.
I like was driving and had to pull my car over and like I just could not stop crying. I could not stop crying. And I was beating myself up because I was like,
Mm.
I'm so mad at myself for crying. I
Mm.
wish I was like feeling joy for my friend right now. And so it was just like this vicious cycle of like shame and grief and shame and grief. And I was able to kind of like collect myself and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna show up as the village right now, like, and showed up and was able to, and I think sometimes when we are in our deepest suffering, that one of the really being of service is the best thing we can do. I really believe that. And it doesn't have to be in this way. Like I feel that with gardening. Like there's a
Yeah.
community garden. And when I am like really struggling and I go support and like I'm in service and that way I leave feeling like a better, brighter person. And so I went to Dez's and about like an hour or two into being there, we were just sitting with the baby and chatting and I was like I was like I need to leave because otherwise like this is going to like I'm going to bring this into her postpartum space. And it was her and her husband and one of them mentioned to me like, "Oh, they brought it up. Did you know?" And I guess they had found like, we're just such a close-knit
Yeah.
little soul family. They must have known that like that I had known and
Yeah.
my grief just like exploded.
Wow.
And they let it.
Mm.
And I just remember like Des just like holding my hand with holding her newborn in her arm and like letting me cry. And it was really like I think a pivotal moment for me because I think one of the core pieces of
Mm.
healing or feeling whole is being able to show up naked at the
Yeah.
altar and in a safe way, like you said, right? Like not in a way that leaves us with a vulnerability hangover, but in a way that like creates safety within our container of like, oh wow, like I can show these parts of myself and that I'll still be loved.
Mm.
And that's really what happened there. And both of those relational components connected to this fertility journey was like, wow, I can really like show up in a real way and like I'm still going to be loved. And it was really helpful for me. And so I think that's also where like the community component in grief is so integral, is
Yeah.
that it starts to do that for people.
Oh my God. I mean, I just like I didn't know all of these little stories because obviously I've only been a part of this in-person community for a few months, and already feel the depth of it. I Everything that you just touched on, yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words because I've been like over here just in the story with you and crying with you and really
Yeah.
feeling this with you. But it just reminds me that like our like this is what it is to be in a community is someone's in grief and someone's in expansion. Like someone's experiencing death and someone's experiencing birth. Someone's in the height of their life and someone's in their void of darkness.
Mm,
And it's like how I actually have had this question for such a long time. Because I had one friend who, when I was in the peak of my divorce, she actually pulled back and she was like, I just find it really hard to relate to you right now because I'm in such an expansive place of life and you're in such a different place. And I was so hurt by that.
mm,
We worked
mhm,
through it, but I was so hurt by that. And I remember after that, I remember I even asked people, I asked like everyone, anyone who would listen to me, I'd be like, how do you relate to people when you're in different places in life? How do you relate to your friends when you're going through whatever? And a lot of people told me like you just don't. Like essentially like you have to go through that stuff on your own. And I just had this feeling all along that I was like, no, like that
mm,
can't be true. And I really just appreciate you sharing how you were able to move through that and like how you were able to be in the truth of what you were experiencing while still like honoring the beauty of what your friends were experiencing. Because
mm,
that's freaking hard. That's not like a soft skill we learn when we're younger. That's not like a blueprint we're taught. Like that was you and the women in this community like creating that container for that to
mm,
be able to happen, you
yeah.
know? And there was another piece I wanted to touch on that you said too around, oh gosh, it was around, yeah, the being of service. I think
Mm,
that I have found also that like being of service, it kind of puts you back into the flow of life in a certain way.
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
just, and it also reminds me of motherhood, right? Because in motherhood, you're like constantly of service and you don't have as much time to think about all the stuff that's going on in your internal landscape, which not that you should ignore that, but I think you get what I'm saying. It's like sometimes you
Yes.
just step back into the web of life for a while.
Yeah, it's so real, and it's reminding me, bringing me back. I sat in ceremony last weekend, and it Says in Love Again, they had been, as you know, coming on the other side of the whole family being a little sick.
Yeah.
And in the ceremony, the person facilitating wanted to offer a song, a chant for their healing, and
Mm,
was like, before I received my chant, was like, okay, we're gonna sit here and, be the vessel as we send this. And I was like moments prior to that, like so just deep in my own stuff.
mm,
And for just a brief pocket was like, oh, I'm gonna step out of this now and just like imagine them in their highest health, highest vitality, like wrapped in a divine light of love. And it sh
mm,
broke me out of the like struggle pocket that I was in because it was like, okay, let me shift out of that and now remember the web, like you're saying, like there's so much more than our own. We get lost, I think, in our own
yeah.
weaving of, I mean, that's like part of spider medicine is
Yeah.
noticing like when we are so lost in our own web that we have weaved for ourselves. And to take
Yeah.
a step back out of that and
Wow.
recognize like the interconnectedness. But it's something, oh man, there's like a few things you just said that I wanted to mention just around like the creating this way of relating to one another. And yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And this is an area like I talk a lot about in grief work too, because
Mm,
such an individualistic, hyper individualistic society. Everything is about the individual and based off of the archetype of the hero, like
yeah.
like produce and output and do it on your own and strength and all these things. And so much of what we're talking about, like grief, birth, embodying like your feminine essence, like
Mm,
are in conflict, dissonance with that like societal construct.
yeah.
And I'm really, a lot of my perspective on grief is influenced by Francis Weller, just to
Mm,
shout that out.
mm,
And one of his many teachings around like grief in community in the village is that this is largely influenced by the Dagara people, also to
mm,
acknowledge that. But that, like, when someone is grieving, like, one, it's not on the individual, it's on the village. When one person's grieving, the whole village is grieving. And that, two, when someone enters into that, like, shadow place of the underworld, the shadow realm, whatever you want to call it, of like really being in grief, they're coming back with medicine. And
mm,
not just for themselves, but for the village.
mm,
So it's also like supporting someone through that pocket because it's not just on them to navigate it, but there is an element of like only you, like you are the one who has to do that, but you don't need to do it alone,
yeah.
is the nuance there.
Yeah.
And I think just one thing I feel like I would regret not is a little bit of like stepping back a few steps in our conversation, but I would
It's
leave
fine.
feeling regret if I didn't say this.
Say it.
That in this fertility journey, what part of the initiation has really been like the deepest connection to God, creator, the universe, like a deep initiation and trust.
Yeah.
And I think part of the acceptance I feel is like, even though like I do believe motherhood is in my future, has also been cultivating acceptance around if that is not the door opening right now, that I do have such deep trust that it's because there's another door that like I'm meant to enter.
Mm,
And that And I really like believe this so strongly because of everything that else that has happened in my life. How many times like what I thought was rejection was divine redirection,
Yeah.
and that there is something unfolding right now that is bigger than me that I just can't see.
Yeah.
And this is the paradox or that grief asks of us to hold the knowing that like this hurts and my pain is real and that my heartache is real and it deserves a space to express itself, and that I'm likely going to look back at some point and say, oh, what? Oh, that's why. That's why. And like knowing that at some, like, there's also gratitude here for like everything that it's taught me. And those
Mm,
two things don't cancel each other out.
mm,
Like, I feel that all the time around the loss of my parents too. Like, I am not grateful for their loss, but I am grateful for the person it's carved me into.
yeah.
And that is a really, I think that psycho-spiritual growth like lives in that space of being able to hold two contradictory truths without letting them like cancel each other out.
Yeah.
And that is hard.
But you just articulated that so well. I don't think I've heard someone articulate that so perfectly before around what it means to be like, because sometimes you hear people say things like, "Oh, I'm so grateful that, this thing happened," and it's like a horrible thing that they're sharing, right? And you're
Hmm.
like, "Huh, that's interesting." But the way that you just explained it around like they don't cancel each other out, being able to hold them without them canceling each other out, that like you're not grateful when you just said that you're not grateful that your parents died, but you're grateful for the woman it's carved you into, like whoosh. Wow.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and it even goes back to what you were sharing about the community piece too, about like you can both be so ecstatic for your friends starting families and be moving through your deep internal process of,
Mm.
and I guess I'll just share this one kind of two-part tidbit to relate to that
Mm.
about actually the week, the day after my ex-husband and I decided that we were separating, I was flying to Florida to stay a week with my friend Elaine, who had just had her first baby, and help her the day
Mm.
after we decided we were separating. And on the flight, I had decided I wasn't going to tell her. I was like, she can't know she's postpartum. The same thing as you, right? I was like, I can't bring this into her space. I get there, and within like, this is like one of my best friends from college. And I get there, and within like, I don't know, less than 24 hours, she's like, so what's going on? How's things? And I just lose it. And we were able to create this space, very much like you said, where she held me through my grief. And then when my grief passed, I was folding baby laundry on the dryer. And then maybe I have another episode of grief, and then I'd make her and her husband dinner. And it's like
Mm.
that's the community aspect. Like
Hmm.
that's holding two things at once. And I think that the more that we can all get comfortable with that, the more we can all get comfortable with like, I don't have to show up perfectly. Like I'm not showing up and dumping everything onto someone who can't hold it, but I don't have to show up perfectly. There's like space for my messiness. I think we
Yes.
talk about these things in regards to romantic relationships so much of like how we navigate that and holding space and whatever, but like for the wider community, I think that that's so key. And you and I have talked about this before that we live in this like culture of convenience where we just like don't show up for people when it's mildly inconvenient for us. But
Yes.
like at what cost?
That is so real. And I think especially what you're saying around like allowing yourself to be seen in your humanity,
Yeah.
which is really a challenging thing for a lot of people to do. And two things I want to say is one, like on coming back to what you mentioned earlier and what you're talking about in the story, like being on two different kind of phases of life, like this
Mm,
idea of contraction versus expansion. Like I
yeah.
absolutely don't agree with your friend who said you can't be in relation with someone when you're different,
Yeah.
seasons. I absolutely think you can be in different seasons. I
Yeah.
think it's like a shared like hunger for life that
Mhm.
really connects people. And that's like, because I do think part of what I've experienced in my journey is that there were friendships where like we were just moving on different timelines. And they were friendships even from like my younger years. And this is like a whole, separate rabbit hole of a conversation.
Yeah.
But that like as we grew apart, like there was a lot of grief in that. And it was really necessary, I think, for so many different reasons. And like we really were on different timelines. And part of it was like we had different values. And
Mhm.
not, I think when I use the word values, sometimes people think like the basic things like be kind to one another and don't steal and like whatever, kind of things like that. It's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
values of like, what type of future do you envision? Like
Yeah.
what type of like that hunger for life? What type of like inner radical responsibility do you hold to like hold yourself to a certain standard and also call the people in your life forward to the standard that you see in them and like hold each other responsible to that.
Yeah.
And I feel like in those chapters of expansion versus contraction, it's like knowing when to like let the person you love be in the mud and be in the mud with them because most people don't need someone to pull them out. They need
No.
someone to be in the mud with them.
Fuck yeah.
Like in that pocket of divorce, like right? You don't want someone being like, well, look at the brights, that all these platitudes. No, like just like sit with me in the fucking mud right now.
Yeah.
Let me be in it. And then once I've metabolized whatever that is, also reminding me of the vision of like the best version of me that you see and that I know exists
Mhm.
within me and like holding me to that and like calling me forward into that. I think that's what really makes like a community, a
Yeah.
village. And in that, it requires so much like vulnerability,
Yeah.
a willingness to navigate conflict as
Mm.
well in a healthy way. So many of us just haven't learned. I never knew how to navigate healthy conflict.
No.
That was the first relationship where it was like, oh, we're gonna fight and then like talk afterwards. Like, and real communities, there's going to be conflict. Any community
Yeah.
has a shadow. So it's like, how are
Yeah.
you going to acknowledge the things that come up in the shadow?
Wow.
All necessary ingredients. And then to your last point, this is like the quote that's been circulating that we've talked about that I agree with, like the cost of community is inconvenience.
Yeah.
I just believe a truth. And so many of us are like one, not great with discomfort. And I think that there's a pendulum like in the healing space for so many people where you swing all the way to like reclaiming this sense of like selfishness,
Yeah.
of putting yourself first, putting your needs first. We're taught boundaries in a very
Rigid way.
wall rigid way.
Yeah.
Yes. All of this, like all in the name of healing. And I think there is for so many people, myself included, like a chapter where it's kind of necessary to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think so.
yeah, like I mean, chronic illness was like one of those chapters where it was like I just in the depth of that was like I literally just don't have the ability
Yeah.
to show up.
Well, yeah, like when you're in an extreme low energy state, like it is like that. I'm
Um,
trying to find, I'm on Instagram because I want to find, there was one slide of that thing you sent me that was about boundaries that I'm like, I need to, this is it. So Brie sent me this post from this woman. Her name is Eiley Jolie. Is that how you say her name? Do you know?
I'm not sure actually.
Okay. Well, on Instagram, it's Eiley Jolie. I'll put it in the show notes, but it says, it shows up in therapy speak on Instagram, in podcasts about releasing attachment to outcomes. And this is the part that I think is really relevant to what we're just sharing now. In the careful boundaried language of people explaining why they can't show up for you, but want you to know they still care. And I just think that that's it. It's like we've learned this way of being boundaried that leaves very little room for showing up for people in need when it might not be perfectly convenient for us.
100%. Or even not showing up because we're not going to be perfect in that.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
yeah, just a nail on the head with that one. And
Yeah.
I've experienced that so much. And I can also look back with accountability and see ways in which in years prior that I also was doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think it's an area where we could really grow as a community, as a society. And in that, I have noticed for some folks like that boundary, right, is at a cost of like I'm protecting my like nervous system, my well-being. Like
Mhm.
I need to like go be by myself so I can like preserve or take care of myself in the name of self-care, in
Right.
essence.
Right.
And I think that like there's such a like unwinding that has to happen there because we have lost the plot of forgetting how much nourishment lives in
Mm,
connection and
absolutely.
how much true nervous is like we can exist in that like ventral vagal state when we're like really in a state of connection with someone being seen and heard and held in a real way.
Yeah.
And I feel like so many people who, and I am very much an introvert. I just like, like as I say this, like 1000%, like, and I think
Wow, it's
like
good to know.
yeah, I definitely like I love my alone time. I do
Yeah.
feel like I can recharge my battery
Mm,
alone. That being said, I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, think they're like severely introverted when really they're just spending time with the wrong people.
yeah. Yeah. That's so real.
Of course, you're gonna feel drained if you're showing up in groups where you have to not be you feel like you
Yeah.
can't be yourself, you're masking how much energy it takes to pretend to be someone else.
Oh, yeah. That's so real.
Or to be in spaces where you have to like shrink or emotionally caretake in a way that doesn't feel good. Like there's so many layers in
Yeah.
that. But I just think for anyone who resonates with the sentiment of like, I've healed so hard that like I can only spend time with my dog now. Like I've seen that. Like I beg of you to not give up on finding people who love you. Like I really like I beg of you because they are out there and community is I think just like one of the most vital nutrients as humans and something that we are so malnourished in.
Yeah. Mic drop, full stop. That's it. Brie, this has been, yeah. I feel like we could keep going on this thread for so long, but
Yeah.
we have touched on so many things in this episode. And yeah, I guess I just want to give you an opportunity to share like where women can find out more about you and like who you are in the world and what you're offering, because I'm sure after like hearing about the wisdom you carry, people are gonna want to know that.
I would love to connect with, first of all, if anyone listens to this and resonates with it, I would love to just connect in a real way. You can find me on Instagram. My handle is being with Brie, and that's spelled Brie, as is my website, beingwithbrie.com. I feel very multidimensional in terms of it challenging to give a title in this like winter
Yeah.
season of my life, but
Yeah.
in the most condensed way, I'm a spiritual counselor. I have undergrad and master's in psychology, and as well as a variety of different somatic certificates and very somatically informed, and
Mm,
emphasis on depth psychology
mm,
and the unconscious mind, dream work,
mm,
all of it. So
mm.
yeah, you can find me there. I work with women one-on-one, and I do some group offerings as well, and you can find all of that on my website.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brie. I feel like I don't even know how to close this. It's just been like so deep and so wonderful. And I guess the best thing I can just say is thank you so much for being here with me.
My absolute honor. I adore you. I'm so grateful for our sisterhood.
Mm.
And yeah, as we close, I just from the deepest part of my heart, I pray that this episode reaches all the women that are meant to receive it, and that for anyone who is feeling alone in their chapter of life, whatever season you find yourself in, I hope that this can be a reminder that you are not alone. You don't need to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Perfectly said. Thank you, Brie.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. I love you.
I love you. Thank you for tuning into the wisdom of the womb today. It's truly such an honor to bring these stories forward to you, and it would mean so much to me if you'd rate and review this podcast so that it could reach more women. If you're looking for deeper support, you can find the link to join our online community, the Cyclical Living Circle, in the show notes below. There, you'll also find the links to book one-on-one virtual sessions, shop the herbal shop, and any group programs that I'm currently offering. Plus, you can follow me on Instagram, and I love to connect with you all there. All right, see you next week.